Jack, first of all, there's a couple of things this week. There appears to have been a change in what happens if a player tests negative after testing positive. That's a change to what happened earlier on in the season. What's your thoughts on how it's changed and how it's actually been relayed to clubs?
So the second part, Brian, in terms of how it's been relayed, I think it'd be remiss of me to say that it hadn't been done and hadn't been done properly, because it may not have been passed on to me. So I can't say for certain that the club hadn't had that communicated to them. Sorry. In terms of the change in that, because obviously we had the situation much earlier in the season where Alex Gogic had a positive test through our testing procedure, and then a subsequent following NHS test that was negative, but still had to go through the procedure of missing games and missing training, etc. So I think it sounds fairly sensible in terms of that adjustment, and if that change has been directed from health authorities downwards, then it would be one that I would imagine has been done without any concerns over further transmission. So all in all, I think probably a sensible thing and a good thing. I suppose the only danger around it is the fact that the rules are altered as the season goes on. But in defence of the people that make the rules, I do think that this season is an immensely challenging one in that respect, in terms of them having to maybe adjust the guidelines that they're given as the season's went on.
Would there be any issues, do you feel, with any, even of your coaching staff or players, with the fact and the knowledge that maybe 24 hours this person tested positive, but he's on the pitch with you?
Well, I can't, as I said, I don't know about each player or club's individual circumstances, but I can only go on the experience that we had, and I think that at that time, because the NHS test showed as a negative, the information that we were given was that Alex was non-infectious because of the levels that were in the system. So I think that would give people comfort that there would be no risk of transmission should that player be on the pitch. But I don't know if that's the same scenario that's unfolded during the week, but I would imagine the fact that we're allowed to play would point to it being very similar.
One of the other things that's changed is it appears now, certainly if you're travelling, unless you're staying overnight, you can't have a pre-match meal. Now, what issues does that throw up for Hibs in particular if they're travelling to, say, Aberdeen and not staying over, or Dingwall, or even Kilmarnock or Glasgow?
Yeah, it's a fairly sudden and probably unexpected change to our guidelines, because we've been allowed to facilitate pre-match meals through the course of the season to date. So to get to this stage and where we are in terms of the wider population with things that are going on at the moment, I'm unsure as to why it would change now, but it has. And it's, we have to adapt our plans. We're probably fortunate that it falls in a little period for us whereby we've got some home games, so we facilitate pre-match in our stadium, and then we'll travel overnight to Dingwall. I think our first game that affects it maybe St Johnstone away, so we're at the moment looking at what plan we can do. That we've got options of eat within our training ground, we would do on a daily basis and facilitate it there, or we'll do it within the coaches we travel on. The problem at the moment is we're travelling on that many coaches as well, so it's not easy to facilitate that within the travel arrangements as well. So it's just another challenge this season. It's not ideal, but it's going to be the same challenge that every club will face now with that changing guidelines again.
The game tomorrow against Aberdeen, it appears that Derek McInnes is under a little bit of pressure. Finishing third this year, Jack, it's got huge consequences, particularly for Europe next season. There's a big prize up for grabs here. Do you think that weighs heavily on managers? Is it weighing heavily on yourself at the moment in terms of trying to finish this in third place?
I think first of all, every manager's under pressure pretty much every single day. It has long been the case in this line of work. It has probably intensified and multiplied a lot through the change in which, or the evolution in which people communicate and give opinion, and how quickly opinion can gather pace, or perceived opinion can gather pace. And I think we're accepting of that as football managers. So I think there is that pressure is ever present. Sorry, I think you can very quickly go from being people have an opinion of being very good to being very poor in a very short space of time. So I think it's something that we're well used to dealing with. In terms of the prize at stake, I think for us there's always been clear targets for us. I've been beating myself a lot with this, but we've had a lot of internal targets that we want to try and achieve. I think the fact that our European coefficient has improved, and subsequently the prize and offer for finishing higher in the league in terms of that increased European involvement just is even more attractive. I don't think it increases the motivation and drives to get there. I don't think it adds pressure, because I think that if you want to be successful, you put pressure upon yourself to achieve anyway. I just think it's something that just makes it even more rewarding should you get there.
Given what you said though, Jack, about pressure on managers, does that mean that managers do have a shelf life? Now, I'm not speaking about Derek specifically here, I'm just talking about managers in general. Is there a time when, managers tend not to stay for 4, 5, 6 seasons now? It tends to be 18 months, 2 years, 2.5 years or so.
I think I'm not sure I don't think it's because they feel the pressure. I think that is because as I mentioned in the previous answer, I think that opinion changes so quickly, and I think that there's so much emotion involved in football that then it's up to decision makers not to become highly emotive in their decision making as well. I think that football managers should be judged on their work, day in, day out. But undoubtedly, we live in a very different era of football management. I think when we look at, in recent times when we've lost, really highly successful Scottish managers, for example, high-profile ones that have passed away, and we've reflected on their times at the clubs. A lot of them have reflected on, what people would term glory years, but obviously substantial times at the one club as well. And that is very much the exception to the rule nowadays. I don't think there are many managers across the United Kingdom who spend a lot of years at the one club, and that is for a variety of reasons, but a lot of the time is because the expectations rise very quickly, and the opinion of them can change very quickly, and they come under pressure very quickly. I've probably lost count of the number of managers now across both Scotland and England that would have been perceived to be under pressure at any given time this season. Probably very few that haven't. So I don't think it's ideal in terms of how you have time to try and build success and build something that has longevity in it, but it's very much just part of the job nowadays.
Thanks, Jack.
Just in terms of this weekend's game, given the circumstances around it, is this sort of ranked as the biggest game of the season, perhaps certainly in a league point of view so far for you guys?
No, just because of the number of fixtures that lie after it. I think if this fixture was, with a couple of games of the season left, that I would accept that being the case. But it is an important match. It's a big match in the context of where we are trying to finish in the table, how high up the table we want to be, and the fact it's against a team that has been, we've swapped places with probably all season. So I'm not downplaying the fact it's a big match. I think that, given the number of games pre-split and then post-split mean that, the consequences of a result either way are not season defining, if you like, but still very, very important.
Just in terms of Kevin and Ryan, obviously they both came back on the game on Tuesday. Just how have they sort of settled back in, putting all the sort of transfer speculation behind them over the last week?
It's been good. Pleasing thing for me is, I've spoken publicly about believing that they would handle it, no problem. I think they showed that with the contribution on the pitch midweek. They both had an influence on us winning the match. Their attitude to the game, how keen they were to help us win the game, I think was evident. So that I never doubted that, but I think it's nice for other people to see it firsthand that they're in the right place, and there's a lot for them to play for over the remainder of this season as individuals, and most importantly part of a group that can go on and have a really good season.
Jack, can I ask you about the Scottish Cup? There's been a lot of debate about whether or not the Scottish Cup is going to proceed at all this season. With the prize at stake, obviously, for a European spot as well, how do you balance the fixture pressure to the argument that perhaps it may or may not go ahead?
I mean, I would love to play it. Traditionalists in that respect, I think we've already had the unusual circumstances, obviously finishing last season's tournament this season, which I think people obviously found a little bit unusual. And so I think ideally we would like to play the competition and play it in its proper format. But I do think that with each passing week it becomes more and more challenging. I do think that we're probably, once we get this month out of the way, we're probably going to come into a fixture schedule that does allow for midweek dates, but it's how you cram all those in, and particularly for the sides that go far into the competition as well. And what you wouldn't want is at any point for any team to not consider the competition of the utmost importance. So right now, I would much prefer to play the competition, but as I said, each passing week makes it a little bit more challenging, I think, and when you weigh that up against the potential league fixtures we have and the importance of those fixtures, hopefully for us. I don't really know where we're at with it. I haven't had any communication to suggest where the competition might be heading. I think that would be good. I think if we all had some clarity on what might lie ahead for us, then hopefully it would help us plan ahead as well.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Jack, just on Aberdeen themselves, obviously they beat you at Easter Road and also up at Tawdry. Why do you think they've been successful against you so far this campaign?
Scored more goals than us in each game.
That's important.
The game at Easter Road, I think was there wasn't a lot in the game. I think the game at Tawdry, I think I questioned the players a little bit after that in terms of our mindset and where we wanted to get to. And I think the players' reaction to that game was good. The truth is there's never going to be much in the games in terms of Aberdeen as a squad where they've been consistently and where they've been for most of the season, if not all of the season. So I don't read any more into it than that. I think the first game certainly was usually competitive, and I think for us the good thing is we're now going into this fixture in good form. I've seen a lot of other teams praised over this recent period, and I think over the last 5 league games, I think we've taken the second highest points total in the league behind Rangers, which you wouldn't think in terms of the praise that's been lavished on other teams, but we've done well in that period, and it means that we go into tomorrow's game in a good frame of mind and also understand, as I said earlier, the significance of the match as well. In
terms of formations, yourselves and Aberdeen have played that 3 at the back, but also at times played 4 at the back. And on Tuesday night, it was you switched to the 4 when they were playing with 10 men, and it really benefited you. You were able to get more players forward, and obviously you won the game. Do you think that was down to the opponents just having 10 men, or is the success of it in the second half, brought the formation back into your mind going forwards?
Well, I think we worked hard pre-season on and be able to flip between a back 3 and a back 4, and we've done it throughout the season. And there'll be times in games that the circumstances will dictate as well. And as you mentioned, midweek was an example of that, whereby we had the man advantage, and we thought that changing system would allow us greater width in the game and allow us to provide that, I think, switch of play that you need when you're playing against a team with a man short. And even half-time tactically to bring Ryan on, because we felt as if we'd have a lot of the ball from defensive positions, and one of Ryan's biggest strengths is his use of the ball. So, like everything, I think it's just giving you confidence knowing that ability to flip between systems is still working well and still working within games as well.
Yeah, can I ask you about the difference between home and away form this season? Your away record is outstanding, but it's not quite been replicated at Easter Road, and that seems to be the case for, I think, more than half of the league this season. Their away records are better than their home. What would you put that down to?
It's a good question, and it's something that we're aware of, and we look at each and every aspect of not only individual performances within games, but what we're doing over the course of the season and patterns that emerge, and we're never dismissive of them. It's not always easy to find. There isn't always an easy answer, if you like, and not something that's glaringly obvious in terms of why that's happening. And for it to be repeated, across not just our league, I think other leagues have shown that in terms as well. I'd imagine some people might point to the absence of home fans helping the away team at times. I think I've spoken about how I think we've been a good counter-attack team this season. And I think that obviously when you play away from home, you usually get more opportunity to do that. Sometimes I felt as if at home we've made the game too open too early, and that's caused some issues. Particularly maybe a month ago we had that slight issue. So I think it's about continually looking at how you can improve different records, and that's one that we want over these remaining fixtures, because we know that if we can do that and continue our away form, then we're going to be in a good place.
So would you say maybe just you notice the absence of the home crowd, which gives you that little advantage? Is it just a little bit more pronounced when you run out at your own stadium?
I certainly think it probably neutralises a little bit of the challenge of going away from home for every team, because undoubtedly traditionally going away from home was seen as more difficult because of the presence of home support and the boost that they give teams. In Scotland, most teams can't really point towards travel distances, etc., because of the geographical nature of the country. But I certainly think that we've always looked at playing away from home as being more challenging. So we have taken out a very clear and obvious help to the home team by removing supporters. So people can sometimes point to that the other way because they'll look about silencing the home crowd getting on teams' backs, etc. But I certainly think that it may have been a factor in the fact that away teams certainly teams have certainly in the majority have had good away records this season.
Thanks, Jack. Is there any news that we haven't covered already?
Just Joe Newell remains absent. Hopefully he'll be back with us next week. But other than that, we're fit and healthy in the same squad as we had midweek. Thank you.
Jack, just to go back to sort of one of the first points you made when you're talking about the pressure of management, do you enjoy that? The pressure every week that comes with perhaps being a bit uncomfortable?
No, I mean, I don't think you do the job if you aren't capable of dealing with the pressure and you don't just accept it as being part of the job. I think that the only people that can properly understand are the people that walk in my shoes up and down the country and at different levels, and it's part of the, I'm not going to say attraction of the job, that sounds a bit ridiculous to say that, but it's just part of what you get from it. You understand that you have to find a way of performing under pressure and producing your best, and accepting you'll be criticised at times, accepting you get things wrong, and then constantly trying to find a way to improve and get better and win games. So I've lived with that a long time now, and as I said, I must like it, otherwise I wouldn't do it. I question my sanity sometimes in terms of liking it, but yeah, it's okay. As I said, I find it pretty much part of my daily routine now.